Gentlemen, you are both drunk on cosmic wine.
Welcome to the show. I'm Dr. Mark Sylvester.
And I'm Dr. Richard Schulman. This is Alt Psych. Hey, we're on. So today we're a podcast. We have a special guest as Brian Hill, who is, and yes, who is a dear friend, of course.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I've been wanting to have him on the podcast for a long time. He's an author of Ace of Wands. I suggest you get the book. Go on Amazon and get it. It's a real page turner. And a humanistic astrologer. And today we're going to talk about astrology and psychology. But before we do that, I'm going to give you your mental wealth tip of the day. Here's the mental wealth tip. Don't try to be validated by somebody who's not as high as you are. Because you have to cut yourself off at the knees to do that. People do that all the time, you know?
Yeah, there's two ways to have the tallest building. Build it or tear everyone else's down, right?
Yeah, that would work. And Brian, we used to build buildings. So how you doing today, Brian?
I'm doing real good, Rich. Thank you. So
yeah,
I'm glad to talk with you. I'm glad to meet Mark. And I know that from a psychology astrology basis, we have a lot to talk about. Just mentioning Jung a little while ago. Jung went deep into this stuff.
Yeah, well, he based a lot of synchronicity, on astrology, the non-causal relationship revealing the unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go
ahead.
Maybe you could tell the viewers how you got started in all this, because you didn't start as an astrologer when you were a little boy. I think you were a basketball player first.
I was a basketball player for many, many years. And then for many years, I built high rises. I built homes. I built office buildings. And we went through a depression, the real estate business did. And life had a different turn for me. And everything I accrued through the years, I lost. And it wasn't just me. It was everybody that was in that business. And one day I asked a friend, I need to talk to somebody, but I don't know who. And she sent me to an astrologer. And I said, I don't believe in that crap. All right. And I went anyway, and it was okay. It wasn't, didn't answer the questions that I really wanted it answered. And then I went back about 6 months later to try to get some clarity, a little bit more. And he gave me less information. And about 2 months after that, I got a hold of my chart. Everybody has a birth chart. And I started to look at it on a Thursday. I was sick. I was in a grumpy ass mood. And I looked at the chart, got some books. And for 7 days, I delved into this subject that I thought was BS. And I came up saying, this has a lot to it that we need to know. And I started to do charts of friends, etc. And now 25 years later, Rich, with thousands of people all across the country and all over in Europe, I still do it. It's an awesome thing. I never went back when the building business got better and my friends came towards me and said, come on, let's go back, start building. I said, I can't do it. I got to follow this path. And boy, did they think I was nuts. But no, it's cool stuff. You know that.
I've been studying with Brian for a long time. We met, I was giving a lecture, I believe it or not, on past life regression therapy. And there was this guy in the back asking really good questions. And then the next day I got a phone call, said, hey, you're the guy in the back,
Right.
And it was instant, he was my brother, and I just really resonated with astrology. He told me, I said, well, how do you do it? And it was like, wow, that's great stuff.
Well, I recall when we started to study, and one day I was home and I got a call from you. And you were with a client and you had his chart and you weren't sure where you wanted to go. And you gave me the data so I could run the chart. I ran the chart and I said to you, check it 5 years old. And you said, okay, I will. That was it. And you told me later that's where the whole thing opened up at 5 years old.
Well, I mean, I don't run my life or my sessions by the charts, but I use them to create hypotheses. that I check out. And I find, you know, if I'm understanding things well, that I can ask really good questions based on some of that data.
Well, you use different terms than I do. I use a chart to look at the chart to go in, my intuition takes me. I don't know, you know, in terms of disciplines or something like that. I just listen, I hear, I get things, call it whatever you might. And so many times it surprises the hell out of me. Well, now it doesn't surprise me too much. I just say, thank you, but it's so on the money. I had a guy, here's a classic story. Had a guy call me up and he had this deep voice, deep bellowing voice at me. You Brian Hill? And I said, yes. And he said, are you the guy that does the astrology stuff? And I said, yes. He says, well, I don't believe in that crap. All right. And I said, well, why are you calling me? And he said, because three people who don't know each other told me I had to talk to you. So I'm calling you, but I don't believe in that stuff. He says, I'm a Taurus. And as soon as he said I'm a Taurus, I knew where the planets were. And I said to him, buddy, you're like a guy with a gun at his own head telling me not to pull the trigger. And he said to me, when can I see you? And I had time the next day. He came in the next day and he told me that night before he called, he had a gun in his head. Now, where does that stuff come from? It just comes from a higher place. I worked with him about 3 times. He was a huge guy. And about 6 months later, I saw him in the parking lot of the shopping center. And this voice came yelling at me, yo, bro. And he came over me. I didn't know what he was going to do, kill me or crush me or do something. And he picked me up and he said, thank you. You saved my life. All right. And where we started was the chart. And you could call it whatever you want. It gives us clues. It gives us hints. It's a puzzle. It's a script. You know, building.
What's your general approach to a chart? Like most people know, I can read about my horoscope in the newspapers, but they don't necessarily understand the different houses or.
You know, the good thing, Mark, about the astrology in the newspapers is that it keeps astrology in the forefront of our lives, or just that we know it's there. The challenging part of it is it's a bunch of BS. It doesn't work, obviously, but it gets us interpreting it, you know, for whatever it is. How I look at a chart, I've been doing it for so many years. I could look at a chart and scan it. It's the best way I could say it. It's like you're looking at a, hold on a second. I just.
You muted yourself.
No, somebody called in. I could look at a chart very quickly now and get a sense of a person. I could feel it. You know, how would you like to know first time client is coming in? How would you like to know about the client before they show up? Right. It's something that's very deep. And I don't look at sun signs so much all the way. I look at moon signs. Like I look at your chart. You have a Libra, 2 degrees Libra. I have it. You do, Mark.
Is that a good thing?
It's a wonderful thing because I have a moon 2 degrees Libra.
Go figure that 2 of the most important men ever in my life have the moon at the exact same degree.
So the subconscious feeling of the 2 of us operates in the same way. People say to me, am I compatible with this sign, a sun sign? And I say, I don't look at sun signs. I look at moon signs. All right.
But what does that all mean to the layperson? What's the difference between a sun sign and a moon sign?
The sun sign represents our conscious mind, how we think. The moon represents our subconscious mind, how we feel. Right. And at times people are confused between what they're thinking and feeling. How many people are really lined up of what they think, feel, and do, right? And speaking of Jung called the moon the body of the collective unconscious, right? And he said, instead of looking at sun signs for compatibility, look at moon signs for compatibility, because the subconsciouses are taking a stronger hold of that than what the conscious mind is getting. We could think what we think, but what we feel is could be a whole completely different thing. And we generally go by what we're feeling, you know, and what people don't understand, if you take the sun sign newspaper, and people don't know they have a moon sign. People don't know they have a Mercury sign. I'll explain all this in a second, or a Venus sign. If you look at the planets, people ask me, how does the planet way up there affect me way down here? Great question. Well, let's look at the sun. Without the sun, we don't exist on the planet, right? And the sun is 93 million miles away. But every day we feel its warmth, we see its rays. Well, the planets operate in the same way. They send off rays, but they're much smaller than the sun. The planets, you know, the Venus is about the same size as the Earth. We could fit 1 million Earths in the sun. So by the time these rays reach us, science can't count them, touch them, feel them, taste them. They can't count them, right? But after doing this for so many years, we're feeling them all the time. Just your question before, off camera, was why are so many people upset now? It's because all these rays are coming down to us in a certain way, all right? It's like when the sun's out, it's the time to go to the beach. When it's raining, we stay away from the beach. Well, that's coming down from the ethers, right? But if we wait for the sun to come out, just like if we wait for good days to happen, we could work with the flow of the universe. The planets have a function. Each planet has a function. If you guys want the power on in your office, who do you have to have an account with? Florida Power and Light, right? I think that's the power company there. Well, if we have to think and speak, communicate, we need an account with Mercury, which is the planet that rules communication. Venus rules love. Mars rules action. Everything we do, we use Martian energy. People, here's a question that you guys, you know, I just want to be happy. You ask somebody, you know, what do you want in a partner? I just want to be happy. They don't have a clue, right? There's 12 different love styles, right? 12, and once we start to understand what makes us happy, right? What makes you happy? You have a Venus in Aquarius. Venus is love. Aquarius, yes, you, Mark, not Rich. Rich has a Venus in Aries. Very much different, right? So what's important to you to have affection for somebody is that they have to be a really good friend to you, because you're processing your love mode through your head. Rich, you've seen him do this. Rich gets excited about everything quickly. Boom, boom, his Venus is in Aries. And then it goes out a little bit. You stay steady once you decide you're going to do something. How you think in your Mercury is in Capricorn. Rich's Mercury is in Pisces. Much different way of thinking and operating in the mode. You think in, I have to have it down on a list. You know, you got your order, you're doing everything, it all follows through. Rich is just up in the ethers, feeling what he's feeling and trying to communicate it to you.
He's floating along the radio waves.
He's floating all around, and you're going, okay, next step, next step, next step, next step. And once we understand how, like a partner thinks, all right, then we can understand this is how I have to talk to the partner. Because people, you know, there's so much. Astrology is so rich. Because it really affects and influences every single area of our life.
Yeah, from relationships to business. It kind of reminds me of like the IMFJs or the like
Yes.
Myers-Briggs stuff, or remember the 5 love languages, kind of like you were saying, if you understand the way your partner communicates or receives love or information,
right,
or handles stress.
I've said many times, I'll take astrology, a good astrology. See, the trouble with astrology, not trouble with astrology, but the trouble with the perception of astrology is that people start to learn a little bit. And once they learn a little bit, they think they got the whole thing.
Kind of like psychology.
Yeah, kind of what?
Sound like psychology, psychotherapy, yeah.
Yeah.
Like a lot of things.
It's like, there's a lot of people doing more harm to astrology because of what they think they know, or what they think they don't know, or whatever it might be, than really good astrologers out there, really understanding astrology is a tool. It's a tool for understanding human nature. And if you don't have an interest in human nature and you're studying astrology, you can't link them up anyway.
So what are the inputs? What all do you need to accurately read someone's sign? I mean, the layperson would say, well, their birth date, right? That's what's all
their birthday, obviously the birthday, their time of birth,
so
and the place of birth.
So the location is relevant.
The location is relevant. It shows, without getting too deep into it, it shows the angle of the planets on the particular location that they're born and what houses there are. There's 4 big elements in astrology. One is the planets.
There he goes hanging up on himself again.
One is the planets. Well, today. One is the planets. The planets are what's doing. That's the big utility company in the sky. Signs are the filters of the action, right? And then there's an aspects. The aspects of planets means this. Think of 10 people in your household, all right? 10 people in the family. Some days Joe is getting along with Mary, and some days she's not. Well, some days Mary Venus is getting along with Joe Mars, and it's not, you know. There was a book, there was this guy, John Gray, I think that was the dude's name.
Yeah,
he wrote a book,
Venus,
Men Are from Mars, Venus. It was a great title, but he had no depth to what he was doing. But it really had an essence of it. Like if you have an aspect, if Venus and Mars are not on a good mode on a day that somebody's born, that means that Venus and Mars are challenging in our psyche. And what people do is they have this phraseology, and not one person has said not to me. It says in their head, they have this dance going on, and it says, gee, I would love to do this. This is Venus, but I got to do that. That's Mars. So they're going away from their heart's fulfillment. And it's a part of a challenge that people have. So
Venus was which?
Venus is think of Venus being the woman, and Venus is love. Venus is beauty.
Love, and Mercury
beauty.
Communication, and Mars action. So that
Mars is action. The moon, simply put, is I feel. All right, I feel like, I'll give you, like Rich. Take Rich's moon in Scorpio, your moon in Libra. He starts to feel deeply. If I ask you how you feel, you start thinking. You go to your head, he goes to his gut. And when you're with people, right? When you're around people, you'll pick them up before you'll pick up how they're feeling before you know how you're feeling. And you have an ability to make them at ease. You could feel their vibration. If they're excited, meaning manic, you calm them down.
I can't tell you how much this means to me to have you say that to me, because I've been haunted my whole life by one of my professors, which I had a lot of respect for, but probably hated more than any other human that I've come into contact with, who said I was particularly awful at doing that.
Well, he's wrong.
I am going to go with you, who's clearly the authority.
I had a front row seat for you, Mark. He was wrong. Hey, Brian, I have a question for you.
But what you're saying is exactly right. I would agree with that. I mean,
you're talking about all this stuff. You know, I have the moon in Scorpio. Mark and you have it in Libra. If these things are set, what about free will?
It's there, my friend. And here's something to look at with the range of it. Like a moon in Scorpio, that has a range. That has a range from the shadow to the light. Scorpio has one of the widest range of energies. I've seen it demonic, so dark. And I've seen it angelic. It's been so sweet. I'm waiting for the birds to start chirping or something like that. But the free will, when people understand their path, and here's something about the chart. I believe after all this time doing this stuff, we choose our chart, all right? We choose our game plan.
Totally.
You mean before entering the world?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's like saying, this is the kind of house I want to build, and you have the plans and you're coming in for it. Well, this is the kind of soul's journey I want, and here's my script. And what I see when people are aware of their chart and they're operating the chart according to the soul's journey, they're happy. Where they get screwed up is running the shadow parts of the chart, or having, instead of saying, it's like getting in the ego in the way. Like, for instance, people say desire is a good thing, right? And it has a range. Desire based upon somebody else's control of your desire, the external locus of control, and you want that because they're giving you that dictum, makes people unhappy. If they live within their own desire, their inner locus of control, what drives them, then they have a happy life. And when I talk to people, like I'm going to talk to a guy today, when I get off of this, he's been a funeral parlor owner for his whole life. I looked at his chart and I said, damn, he hates it. He hates it. And he's doing it and doing it, you know? And so we're going to have this big talk about him selling that business, right? And when we know intuitively what we should be doing, but we so often overrule it by things that are not us, belief systems. I do not like these words. Should, have to, ought to. I want a life of want tos, because a life of want tos, pure want tos, right? Not ego's want tos, right? That's where people live a happy life.
It's one of the reasons we have this podcast, was because I said to Mark, how about we do the podcast of what we've always wanted to talk about? You know, because we were starting interviewing people and it was okay, but I found that Mark was the most interesting person I had interviewed up to that point. I said, how about we just be psychedelic warriors or whatever, and talk about what we really want. And then all of a sudden it started to take off and I was really enjoying it. You know, I want to get back to the free will thing just for a minute. And this is my version of it, so please comment. I look at the chart as revealing tendencies.
Yes.
You know, and that within those tendencies, you look, it's going to be hard for me to play in the NBA. You know, I picked the wrong parents.
Right.
But if you look at my chart and you say, hey, this guy, maybe he should be a psychologist.
Right.
You know, it's like, whoa.
Free will. Here's something I don't want to forget. Right. The soul chooses this chart, not the ego. And when tendencies, however you want to put the words, we have a feeling, we have a tendency, this works for us. It's going with your own flow, feeling it. If it feels good, this is so simple, but if it feels good, go with it. If you're struggling with it, if you think you should do it and work hard and all that crap, man, it's just going in the wrong direction. The people who make the most money, if we use that as a gauge, the people who make the most money in this country, let's just stay here in this country, do not work. They play. Nobody ever said, I worked third base. I worked the guitar. I worked that role, right? We're playing. We, the mass populace, pay these people to play music, to play sports, all right, to play roles in movies. And then we go to work when our dollars pay them so we can have a vicarious thrill. And we get our jollies off by watching somebody else get their jollies off. If we were doing what we love to do, that's such a trite thing. But the people don't do what they love to do because they think, how am I going to make a living at this? Where's my money going to come from? Well, Venus, the planet of love, is also the planet of money. And the infinite intelligence of the universe set this whole thing up, all right? So as somebody's expressing their heart, they're also expressing source, the divineness in them. You don't think that intelligence or that divineness has figured out a way that we could get fed by doing what's coming through us? to the other person. We share our gifts. They share their gifts to somebody else. Money is just really a medium of tool of an exchange. We have to stay in our heart. We really do. And that's why, and getting back to how you started, sorry if I went off and ramble because I get really charged about it, right? Is when you guys decided to do what you wanted to do is when the podcast took off. When you were doing what you think you should do, okay, or this might work, don't figure it out. Here, I'm going to give you a quote from one of your people. When I say your people, you know what I mean about. Neil Diamond said, the ancient philosopher, don't think, feel. It's no big deal. Go with the feelings. They usually work. I wasn't saying that, right? And you go with your feelings. You go with your feelings.
I actually don't go to work. I have hard fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm tired at the end of the day, horribly tired, but I've had fun all day long.
Well, you're tired after sex too, but you had all fun all day long.
Well, maybe for 20 minutes or so.
For a couple of minutes, right?
I have some questions. Is it time for some questions? Because I got some questions that are
Go, let them rip.
I have an unresolved issue because I was told by some human at some point, maybe not a professional astrologer, but definitely another human on planet Earth, that I was the 13th sign. A, what the hell are the 13th and 14th signs? And B, what is the possibility of this 13th sign, which name I cannot pronounce, Ophiuchus or something like that? Why would it have been created? Did that have to do with
it was created for you, Mark?
Was there every 20 years or something?
Astrology, Mark, astrology is ripe for mental masturbation.
Okay,
right?
We specialize that in here in this channel.
Right. I would say that they're always looking for new signs and new whatevers right there. I would say, forget that stuff.
So to be clear, I'm not an Ophiuchus. You're hereby christening me as a Sagittarius.
You are a Sagittarius.
Which is the finest sign in all of the rainbow, correct?
In your rainbow, yep.
I knew that was coming.
What would
you
be
let
the
me just drop something on you, all right?
Okay, drop it.
Sagittarius is the happiest sign in the zodiac, right?
Well, that's sad.
I'm going to get there. I'm going to get to your point. My sense of you is you don't operate enough in that energy. You operate on Mercury and Capricorn, and that drags you into the world of being serious instead of playful. And Sagittarius and Capricorn's ruled by Saturn, which there's probably a little bit of depression going on with anybody who has Mercury and Capricorn. If you get out of that and trust your instincts, all right, rather than your brain, which sometimes could override anything, life gets a whole lot better for you. You have a Mars in Sagittarius, so you like fast. Fast is good for you, right?
I lived my
He
life.
He was a champion water skier, Brian.
There you go.
And I lived my life a quarter of a mile at a time.
Yeah, there. So it's like, what's that say? Manic? Yeah.
Oh, this? I'm just plugging my other YouTube channel.
It's Manic Mechanic.
A manic mechanic. Cars is another thing you probably like.
Oh, yeah, you got that right.
Well, the YouTube channel gave that one away. All right, I got another one. So based on your sign, and I don't even know what a house is, and I don't even know if we're going to get to the technical part of things today, but each unique individual has different tendencies, we'll just say. But there are forces that are more powerful that affect all of us, like for instance, the sun, or a lot of people have heard of this Mercury retrograde thing. Does Mercury in retrograde affect all people equally? Or because we're all different signs? It
affects everybody, but not the same way because we're not wired the same way. All right. And
I don't understand that.
We're not wired the same way?
No, I mean, I understand the concept, the way you explain it, but I don't understand the dynamic of it. Like, in other words,
Mercury retrograde?
not just Mercury retrograde, but Mercury retrograde's action on people being different because they're wired different. In other words, is it just like if I enter a contract, it might be a little bit bad, but if a Capricorn enters a contract, it might be really bad during Mercury in retrograde?
That we have to go to the chart. I mean, we could spend a long time with that question, but it's a good question.
Thank you.
Mercury retrograde is like, when it's Mercury retrograde, it's the same as saying it's raining on everybody.
Gotcha,
Okay?
gotcha.
It's raining on everybody. So on this particular day, I wanted to go to the beach. So that's not a good thing for me today. But somebody else could say, man, we needed the water for my garden. So it was a good thing for them today, right? So it's how we use this. The people in Mercury retrograde generally get more thought process than the average bear. And I could explain that sometime to you in a way. So it becomes hard for them to clearly explain to somebody who's normal Mercury, what they're thinking. It's like taking a garden hose and hooking it up to the planet Mercury, a 2-inch hose, 2 inches down to the person. It's a perfect flow. When Mercury happens, this literally happens, Mercury slows down and stops in orbit. Right. So it's like, instead of a garden hose being hooked up to Mercury, it's a big funnel being operated up there. So you get a funnel coming of water and you're trying to make sense out of the whole thing.
Right. I want to make a brief comment. It actually doesn't stop. It's our, from our perspective.
It goes, well, it doesn't stop. It doesn't go backwards, but it hits the point, all right, where in the zodiac.
Yeah, it goes back in the zodiac.
Keeps moving. You got to go back.
It keeps moving, but we.
Well, what you just said is a perfect segue into my next question, and this one's going to blow your skull. I warned you we should pre-rehearse these questions, but Rich wouldn't have it. He said that I wouldn't be able to get you off guard with anything. However, I have.
Good luck.
This is more of a statement than a question. I have a burgeoning right brain, but it's a little bit kind of like a fat, clumsy toddler that has got a lot of energy and direction, but falls down a lot. And I'm turning down the left brain that I've been so born and ingrained with. But I still learn kind of by analogy. For instance, we understand the way sound waves work because we happen to understand the medium of vibrations through air, and we understand the way light works. When we get into, like, we've done shows on Kundalini and Chi and things like that, these are ancient, obviously agreed upon principles for acupuncture and yoga, etc. But Western medicine obviously hasn't found the energetic Chi diagram, or they can't measure it with a meter that's been invested yet. So my question is this: what is the analogous ether that the planets exert the influence on us? Do you feel like it's similar to energy that flows?
Yeah,
like
absolutely. Mark, it is absolutely energy.
Right. Is it similar to gravity because it can work at long distances at light speed or faster?
Well, go back to the sun. The sun takes this powerful force that it has and it radiates out down to us. 93 million miles away, we're feeling it. If you take the planet Venus, it's about the same. It's the same size as the Earth, like we said, and it radiates. Now, obviously, we're not going to feel that pulse as much as we feel the sun's, all right? But think of planets giving off, sun we could give off heat, and every planet gives off their radiation. There's a heat. But think of the planets in a way that Venus has a tune to it, music, has a vibration to it, a different vibration than Mars. If you have a daughter, do you have a daughter?
3 of them that I know of.
3 of them, okay. Good for you. So it's a Venus energy is more like one of your daughters coming and give you a nice little sweet kiss on the cheek. Oh. It's gentle, it's loving, it's kind, it's affectionate, and we feel that. Mars, however, is if Rich came in the other room and punched you in the nose. All right, it's more of a violent act. When I look at athletes, not all athletes, but a large preponderance of athletes have very good Mars and signs. It's in fire. Like when a Mars, like you, okay, I'll take you. You have a Mars, you're male, how are you going to go out and approach? This is Mark. I'm looking at you, Rich.
Oh, okay. I
Right?
can't tell who you're looking at. This is all
I
internet
can't
stuff.
tell either by who I'm looking at.
I don't even know if I hit the record button.
Okay.
It says recording, Mark.
Mars energy. Mars energy has to do with physicality. When I see a Mars in Sagittarius, it's a fire. So when you think of fire, the element of fire is moving. All right. There's a lot of energy coming through that. You have a Mars in Sagittarius. Hence, that's where you did your skiing. Right.
I like to do stuff.
Huh?
I like to do stuff.
Yes, because you got that energy to come out. You doing stuff when Sagittarius rules the butt, the hips, and the thighs. When you have those moving, all right, your mind calms down. You get easier, you get calmer, you feel more fluid.
Doesn't everyone feel better when their butt and hips and thighs are moving?
Not as good as Sag, man. No, if you take somebody with a Mars and Taurus, they won't get off the couch.
Hey, wait a minute. I resemble that remark.
Damn, we should have done my wife's chart.
Well, Rich, let's get back to your Mars and your Mars is in the 12th house.
Yeah.
Right, right on the cusp of the 11th and 12th. But here, let's go to your Aries. There's your fire. That's what keeps you moving. All right. So different elements, we use the tools in a different way. So each thing has a vibration. Think of it as a tune, a musical tune. If you hear dun 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 dun, you know something bad's coming, right? If you hear twinkle twinkle little star, you're looking for something good. Well, we have a vibe going on. All the planets have vibrations that they're sending down to us. If somebody here, I'll give you the moon because the moon is so prevalent every day, right? If I ask somebody who has a moon sign in Cancer how they're feeling, they could start crying on me. Their eyes well up and emotions rush to them, right? If I ask Rich how he's feeling, the emotions start down low and then they're going to come up slowly. If I ask you, Mark, how you feeling, like I said before, you start thinking. If somebody's moon sign is in the sign of Aries, in the element of air, rather, a moon in the element of air thinks more than feels. The moon in a fire acts more than feels. So it becomes a real complex read to understand a chart because you're not looking at one or two things. It's like looking at if we go to cars, if we look at an engine, all the parts mean something, but the car doesn't run unless all the parts are put in the correct way and they're all worked in the correct way.
Now you're speaking my language.
And not all engines are the same. They all have carburetors or whatever they have, but they're bigger, smaller. Some have more horsepower. All right. So some people have more horsepower in their Mars. Some people are lovers. They really want to love, and other people are warriors. So that all shows up. If I see a chart where Saturn, we'll get to this some other time. But if I see somebody's chart and Mars is in the first house, I see somebody who's angry, okay, or is physical, right? Or even since Mars, you think of Mars as being the red planet, they have red hair. You know, we could start to see this stuff. If somebody has Venus, here, I'll give you something. The first house is a house of self, all right? Venus is a house of beauty. So when I would be expecting a new client and it would be a woman, I'd expect her to be easy on the eyes, right? Pretty lady showing up at the front door. One day I was looking at a chart, had it all prepared, and I was expecting somebody easy on the eyes. Well, opened the door and there was this woman literally about 6'1", close to 300 pounds, looking like the wild wicked witch of the West. And I knew I had the wrong time on the chart. And I asked her about her time, and she says, no, I gave you the wrong time by accident. It's not PM, it's AM. I ran the chart again, and there was the woman looking at me, who I knew now, face to face. The chart matched up with it. So the chart is a very complex thing. We can't put it in a cookie cutter kind of energy.
So I'm interested to know how you apply the chart. And Rich, I mean, maybe this question for you too, not both before initially meeting a patient, during sessions, or maybe throughout the arc of their treatment. How do you overlay astrology and use astrology to inform your practice of psychology and psychotherapy? I think that's super neat.
I think I said it before. I use it as metaphorically understanding the psyche and asking good questions. It's kind of like, in a way, it's more powerful than a dream. A patient will come in, they'll tell you a dream, and you try to figure out, well, how does that reflect something about them? I do it very similarly. I don't use it to run the session, but I can say, okay, well, I have Venus in Aries, and that means something. So I say, well, I don't say, hey, you have Venus in Aries. I say, well, do you notice that in relationships, you get excited fast? Okay. And they'll almost invariably say, yeah. Having a Scorpio moon means I'm going to look for the deepest truths of the universe. But it doesn't make my ordinary relationship so easy. Because I will ask people, what I know. I don't do it like an astrological reading at all. I say, well, do you feel this way? And you'd be amazed how many people go, yeah, how did you know that? And in fact, I worked with a very famous baseball player once, and he wasn't famous yet, but I knew he was going to be because he was an amazing guy. He had a Virgo sun, a Scorpio moon, and a Libra ascendant, I think. So I said, you really like coming up in the ninth inning with the bases loaded, don't you? He goes, yeah, how did you guess? And I said, and what we got to do is to figure out how you can organize and prepare for the game, and I want you to stay in balance. He said, how'd you know all that stuff? I said, I'm just a really good psychologist.
So you bring up an interesting point. So you don't always necessarily clue patients in on the fact that you may be getting additional data from their charts.
I don't, because I get information from everywhere, and a lot of it is intuitive, like Brian says. I want to inform myself with everything I possibly can. I mean, that's why I take a history. It's why, I look at their relationships. It's why I ask them what kind of music they like. I'll take everything. And, one of the things that occurs to me, Brian, we had this conversation years ago, but I want to check in with you. I remember you telling me once that big financial institutions will use an astrologer and just call them a financial consultant.
Didn't Nancy Reagan, or was that a psychic?
Oh, Reagan had an astrologer.
Reagan had astrologer, yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, Jean Dixon, who was an advisor to many presidents, was also an astrologer, even though she advertised more as a psychic.
Right.
My friend, I had a friend who was basically a spy, and he told me that everyone in Washington used it. They just didn't talk about it.
What I find fascinating about both of you is that the way that you use this information, the way that you interpret it, the way that you use it to guide helping people, because I think that there's this general stereotype that it's for, I don't know, these wispy spirits that like reading tea leaves and entertaining themselves reading the horoscope in the Sunday Times, or worse, that astrologers are soothsayers, or this astrologer is also gonna tell you your future, and maybe have a crystal ball and tarot cards.
Well, it's something that it's easy to poke fun at when you don't know it.
Yeah, and it's been around forever, so I feel like
how I sit down with a client. I said, I have your chart, right? And obviously they know that. And I said, what you and I are going to do is explore you. All right. If I'm saying things to you that don't feel right, resonate, you tell me. My vested interest is not in being right. My vested interest is in your truth.
That's what I admire about what you're doing, because that is more helpful, I think, to people. I'd say across the board, it saves you time, energy, frustration. I think it clues you in on a lot of things you might not otherwise pick up from additional sources. And I think that people need to know that there are, professionals, there's advisors to presidents, there's PhDs that are using this tool, gathering this information. And similar to like how we don't exactly understand the mechanism of chi, we don't have a chi meter, we can't draw out. I mean, we can draw the meridians, but try to get a scientist to find one until that tool is invented, which I believe it will be. I think of astrology very similar, and your kind of analogy about the sun is really helpful, because I've always found it interesting that the sun, yes, it's pushing light and energy and electromagnetic spectrum and heat, but it's also pulling, right? Because of its gravity, it's pulling on us, but at the same time, it's pushing back on us because photons have mass and whack into us. So there's all of these like dynamic forces that are affecting the Earth, the planets, our bodies, maybe on the quantum level. I have a feeling that this information is probably stored in some sort of a subspace or
somewhere up there. This,
ether.
If we talk science, if we talk physical science, it starts to help. But more and more, meta science this is meta science. This is the same laws and the same properties, only we can't see them. And some people, don't ask me how I got this. I don't know. I didn't study it, man. That's for sure. But I could read it. I could read it better than I could read some of the novels I read, right? And it's the language, it's the music that the planets are giving us, and how we use this music within ourselves. And what I do is I'll sit down, like I looked at yours before we did this. It took a few minutes. I got a feeling of who you are. All right. I can't explain that until we sit down. Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Did I shock you that I wasn't a 300-pound woman?
You shocked me.
Because you don't know what's going on down there.
You don't have any idea. You know what? You're absolutely right. That's in this world. No, but
I have a question I'd like you to
wonderful. What?
I have a question I'd like you to comment on, but finish what you're talking about.
Go ahead. We would just
no.
We got time for one more.
How do you respond to people who say, "Well, this is anti-religious, anti-God, that kind of thing"? Because you're going to get that kind of stuff.
Oh, I got that on television. When I was on somebody, the guy called in. I was on up in Tampa, the CBS. You remember Kathy Fountain? The name Kathy Fountain. She was the lead anchor there, and she had her own show. And some guy called in. That was a woman called in and vilified me for exactly what you're talking about. Just raked me over the coals. And Kathy Fountain said, "Well, what do you have to say about this?" And I said, well, every year you celebrate the birth of Christ. And yes, I do. And I said, "You do it like the 24th, 25th. Yes. And I said, there were 3 people trying to find Jesus. Who were they? And she says, they were the wise men. And I said, another name of wise men? And she says, yes, they were the Magi. I said, you know what Magi means? It means the royal astrologers. And what were they following? They were following signs, the stars. What were they following? They were following a conjunction of Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn. So you have 3 astrologers following signs of the planets to find Jesus. I said the Bible opens up chapter 1, verse 16. God made the sun to rule the day, the moon to rule the night, and then he made the rest of the stars. and the planets. I said, what for? Do we have a willy-nilly God that would do that and give us tools to commit evil? No, they're like gifts from God to help us live our life. And what you're reading was written over 3,000 years ago.
Was she satisfied? Was she satisfied with that answer?
She hung up. She was done with me.
I'm satisfied with it. That was a great answer.
Yeah, 3,000 years ago, they're reading that you shouldn't trust these people. Well, let's say we advanced a little bit in 3,000 years ago. At times we don't see it, but we did.
Brian, when can we have you back? Because there's so many more questions I want to ask, but we're out of time.
Well, we gotta have you back right now. I can't see you, Brian.
Is he saying?
Hello.
Talk to the hand because the face ain't listening.
Yeah, well, just whenever you're going to do it in this room, have Rich get a hold of me. You get a hold of me or something, and we'll do it.
I'll have my people contact your people.
My people.
I appreciate it so much. Like I said, I have so many more questions. I wish I knew more to ask more intelligent questions.
Well, I'll school you, Mark. You can ask more better questions.
Hopefully we found this very entertaining, and thanks as always to our host, the Dr. Richard Schulman, and in honor of Carl Jung's collective unconscious and interest in astrology. I named myself after him today. So
well, I'm glad somebody did.
Until next week, we've got to rehearse, right?
Right.
See you.
1, 2, 3, 4. Be
well.
Well.
Be well.
Hey, thanks, Brian. It was great to see you, and thanks so much.
I love you. Thank you.
Too.